Hi, it's lesson 38. Today I'm going to show you how to do box stitch and also how to add a chain edge. Now, here's my examples of box stitch. There's two cowls and I'll put the pattern in the information area. I did them on the straight rods, not in the round. And I joined them by casting off in knit stitches using lesson 6. Box stitch makes a very nice flat reversible fabric with a lot of texture. It's good for scarves or blankets. This was made with one skein of woolies. I had barely enough. I had literally an inch of yarn left. And but it makes a beautiful warm cowl. This was 18 stitches and I used 2 strands of a number 4 that I did the chain plying with, but did not spin it, so it's basically a faux plying, faux Navajo ply. Now, when you see a pattern for box stitch meant for straight knitting needles, as remember now we have to transpose a straight knitting needle pattern. It will usually be written out multiple of 4 plus 2. That's what they want you to put on the pattern, or put on when you cast on. If you do a circular knitting needle pattern, if you want to make this box stitch on your open hoop, you don't have to change the pattern at all, and it will simply read multiple of 4, or it might give you a number of stitches. If you divide by 4, you'll see that it is a multiple of 4. But in order to have it come out on straight knitting needles, they have you do this. They have you begin and end each row with the same stitch, and it balances the stitch out. Now, and it also kind of makes it a little more sense when you do your rows. Whoops. Okay, now, what we have to do to transpose a pattern, let's say this is the pattern right here, this 4-row repeat. So they want you to knit, purl, knit, and then repeat from that asterisk to the end of the row. Now your pattern might just read row 3 as row 2 and row 4 as row 1. So in order to transpose it, in order to avoid confusion, it's easier if you just go ahead and write out what row 2 is and write out what row 1 is. And then it becomes, when you do it for the rods, because you have to reverse, remember, every other row, just like you would do if you were taking a straight knitting needle pattern and putting it on circular knitting needles. So once you've written it all out, then it makes it easier to transpose row 2. So instead of purling, you're going to knit. Instead of knitting, you're going to purl. Instead of purling, you're going to knit. And the same thing is true for row 4. Instead of knitting, you're going to purl. Instead of purling, you're going to knit. Instead of knitting, you're going to purl. Now, if I do just a plain 6 stitches like this, this is 6 stitches across, knit in this pattern. Of course, the rod pattern here at the bottom. Now, you can see what happens on that last stitch. It kind of gets obliterated by the turn. So I'm going to show you today a chain edge stitch for the edges, and that will make that more attractive. You wouldn't have to do your pattern 4 plus 2, but you have to rewrite it and figure it all out, because you have to analyze what's really happening. If you want to just do a multiple 4 pattern on the rods, you can, but it won't be balanced anymore. And I hope you can see that on how this stitch looks, because you can see that here's my bars, then there's V's, bars, V's, V's, bars, V's, bars. Notice now it's no longer balanced from side to side. It goes back and forth. But just so you're aware of that, you can easily do it, and you just have to make sure then, if you want to do a multiple 4 pattern on the rods without doing the 4 plus 2, because you don't want it any wider, you need to know that when you begin row 2, you have to purl where you end. In other words, whatever your last stitch was on row 1, you need to make that your first stitch on row 2. And I'll write that pattern out too. But again, you won't get a balanced pattern. Now, what I'm going to show you today, though, is doing the pattern of 4 by 2. Now, this is a mistake. You shouldn't see this on the edge. I'm just pointing that out. And I hope this color is showing up. What I'm going to show you is how to slip your first stitch so that your edge will look like there's a chain on it on both sides, and now you can see the whole pattern, whereas before you don't. So that's what we're going to do. And it's easiest, again, if you write the whole pattern out. The graphics are cheesy, aren't they? Okay, this is what we're going to do today. And I'm going to now bring these forward. Hang on one second. And I've already cast on 8 stitches. Now, we're doing a multiple of 4 plus 2, and we need to add 2 for the chain edge. So whatever your stitches are, whatever your count is, if you're going to have, you know, multiple of 4, if you're going to have 12 plus 2, which is 14, you would need 2 more stitches, 16, for your chain edge, if that makes sense. Now, I'm going to kind of prop this up behind our rod stand, and in order to do that, I'm going to take my back legs off. And I hope, if you can't see that during this video, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to be writing it out for you. But so, now, we have 8 stitches on for our demonstration. You'll need your, in this case I'm using the US 19 and 2 strands of a number 6 for our demonstration. And I need to turn my chair, so we might have to reposition the camera a little bit here, so avoid the Blair Witch Project thing here. Can you still get that, Joe? It doesn't matter about the writing, it's just this. Okay, so what we're going to do, again, is we're going to be adding a chain edge on both sides of this. So I've gone ahead and I've already, as I said, cast on 8 stitches. That gives us our 4 plus 2 plus our 2 chain edge, and you're going to need your stitch counter. And so to begin the first row, the first thing you need to do is slip 1. Now, this isn't really going to be a true stitch, because when I do this, you'll see it's not, but you have to still slip the first one. So in order to slip the first stitch, what you need to do, you're not just going to slip it off and put it on the other side. You're going to turn it. And in order to turn this first stitch, if I take this off and try to turn it clockwise, I'm going to end up with a twisted stitch. I can't do it that way. What needs to happen, if I put that back up, is that I need to bring the yarn up, then take it and twist it clockwise and put it on the other side. Remember, we've never done that before. Normally we put the back of the stitch just as we take it off. This time we're going to turn it to make this chain edge. Now we're going to begin our pattern for the box stitch. So we knit 2. Now we purl 2, and that could be, you can make them either this way. Now we knit 2 again. And now we need our edge stitch, so now we knit 1. And that's our first row. Our second row is we begin with a slip. Now this time, when we turn the stitch clockwise, we leave the yarn down, put it on your pipe. We're going to knit 2. And another way to do your purl stitch, if you want, or your back stitch, is to bring your stitch up and lay it over your working yarns. And then we do 2 more front stitches. And we need to make our edge stitch, so we're going to back stitch 1 to end the row. And that's one will be a little bit loose. This is row 3. We slip 1, and again, if I'm going to take this off and twist it clockwise, notice how that twists my stitch. That tells me in order to make that slipped clockwise stitch, I need to bring my yarn up, then turn it clockwise and put it on. And I'm on row 3, so now this time I'm going to purl where my knit stitches were. This is considered a 2 by 2 pattern. You can see there's no bar there, so I knit that stitch. This time I'm purling it. Now I knit 2. Notice I'm going to knit where I did a purl stitch. The first 2 rows were the same. Now I'm switching. And now I'm going to back stitch and back stitch, and now I have to do my final edge stitch for row 3, and I'm going to knit it. Now row 4 is, I first start with the slip stitch, so take your stitch off, rotate it clockwise, put it on the pipe, bring your yarn up so that you can purl, or back stitch, now I knit, and notice this last stitch was a knit, there's no bar. These row 1 and 2 are the same, and row 3 and 4 are the same, so that'll help you keep track of where you're at. And now I purl, and I purl, and I finish my edge stitch. If I were doing more stitches, the edge would be basically a garter stitch, if you notice that. So that's my 4-row repeat, and now I can begin another set. And you can either do this on paper. What I like to do is say, well, that was completed my first set, and now I put another one here again. I know that's not 11 rows. I've done one set already, and now I'm going to begin. In fact, you can say I'm beginning my second set of the first row. Now I want to take off my first and slip it, but I can't do that. Look what happens. I need to bring my yarn up, and I need to take my stitch off and turn it clockwise, and now I can knit 1 and knit 2. Again, now notice this was a back stitch last time, but rows 4 and 1 are not the same. So I want to do the opposite. Oops, didn't get them both. I knit these two, this stitch, so I need to back stitch it. I knit 2 more, and I need to finish my edge stitch, so I knit 1. Row 2, I slip 1 this time when it comes off, and I rotate it clockwise, a half turn basically, and place it on. I can leave my yarn down. Now I knit 2, and now I back stitch 2, and knit 2, and now I purl or back stitch my last one. Now I do row 3, and again, when I take this off and try to rotate it, it doesn't work. I need to bring my yarn up, turn it, place it on. The working yarn should be coming around and through in this case, and I will back stitch 1 and back stitch a second one. Whoops, got more than 2 strands there. Now I front stitch. Notice I back stitched in the same place last time, but that's what's supposed to happen. I'm on row 3 now. So this time I'm doing the opposite of the preceding row for my pattern. And my last edge stitch is a front stitch. And one more row. Again, I'm going to slip 1. So take it off. Again, every time you're rotating it clockwise. And now I purl 1. Purl 2. And front stitch 1. You want to try, if you are doing this on straight rods, you want to try to complete all 4 rows for the pattern. And then this time I back stitch 1. You want to try to do all 4 rows for the pattern. If you're doing it in circular, you can end on a row 2 or a row 4. And your edge now will look like this. And you'll look like sort of a chain there. And now you'll have a complete pattern repeat. So that's how you do box stitch with the chain edge. If you have any questions, email me at laurasbusycorner@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.